Good morning. My name is Wajahat S, Waj to my friends, Waju to my mom, and the guy who knows pretty much everything there is to know about the Pakistani military to the rest of you. It's been a long night. Around 7 or 8 hours ago, I uploaded a video, my first in several years, because I just couldn't take it anymore. I had to weigh in on the painful process of choosing the Pakistani army chief, which the country is undergoing right now. That process has become a bit of a political firestorm. The idea was to just tell my friends and fans about what is really happening, but that video has gone to an extent where not only have I received the request to do this video not just in Urdu, but in English, and expand audiences and try to explain what's really going on. I'm going to keep it short though, because the last one was really long. This is really short. Please subscribe to my channel. If you understand Urdu, watch the previous video if you have an hour. But this is going to be a big picture whirlwind of what is ailing Pakistan right now. Why is the government obfuscating and delaying the process of choosing the army chief? Why is it politicizing the process? Who's behind the politicization? What's the big deal? Who is this guy? What's the big deal? Every country has an army. Every army has a chief. Some armies have several generals running them. What's the big deal in this case? And then, of course, a quick profile of the candidates who will be the boss in that sense. I'm also going to make some quick recommendations in the end. But first, I want to start with the stakes. This is a big deal because the Pakistani military is the sixth largest military in the world. In that tri-service Army, Air Force, Navy tri-service apparatus, which is both conventional and nuclear. The Army dwarfs the Navy and the Air Force by a huge factor. The Army thus has more at stake in the sense that it is involved in more operations on the ground. The country is facing at least two insurgencies. The longest running insurgency in its history is ongoing, in fact, stronger than ever in Balochistan, which is the largest province. That's the province I'm from, by the way. And in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa Northwest province, which straddles Afghanistan. Both of those, in fact, fall on the Afghan-Iran border, and both of those are considered part of the Western theater of conflict. So there is an insurgency brewing in the northwest and an insurgency ongoing in the southwest. That is one problem. The other problem is India, Pakistan's arch nemesis. On the other side, it has a right-wing government, which is no fan of Pakistan's. That had led to serious tensions starting from the mid-2010s. Huge exchange of firing pretty much every other day. I've spent half my career covering the Kashmir front, but there's a very tentative, very, very delicate ceasefire underway right now between India and Pakistan in the disputed border regions of Kashmir. And that ceasefire should hold because two nuclear-armed rivals going eyeball to eyeball with each other, especially with China in the mix as well, up there in the north of that region. Chinese troops for the first time are operational in this region. That creates a whole other dynamic, which raises the stakes for the Pakistani military. So it's a big gig. It's a major gig in terms of the military stakes. So when this guy comes in, he's going to have a lot on his plate. But also, there's a lot of political stakes. The military, by hook or by crook, has run the country directly or indirectly for most of the last 75 years. There's been 15 army commanders, 15 army chiefs. 4 have ruled directly through coups and emergencies. The rest have ruled indirectly or led from behind, so to say. Some of them, like the current one, General Qamar Javed Bajwa, haven't officially conducted a coup, but they have placed themselves at the center of the entire national, political, diplomatic, even economic apparatus by granting themselves extensions and influencing political events, governments, the bureaucracy, etc. So that means that the army, whether you like it or not, there's an old saying that some countries have armies, and Pakistan's case, the army has a country. Firstly, I mean, there's other examples even in the region of that happening. Myanmar is right next door, not too far away, also known as Burma, and has a junta running it. Similar situation has been under military control, but Pakistan is not Myanmar. Pakistan has a much more sophisticated civil society, has a intellectual, industrial, economic, and power elite, which is very different from Myanmar's case. In that case, it's also got very constitutional roots. So there's been this pushback through the years, through the decades, of always trying to get some sort of equilibrium where the civilians can end up ruling themselves. Obviously, that's been a bit of a pipe dream, because eventually what's happened is that the Pakistani army has now become a political player as well. We saw during the recent tumult this year, starting from earlier in the year when former Prime Minister Imran Khan was removed from power, right down till last night when the outgoing army chief, they say he's outgoing, but only he knows whether he is. But even last night, the outgoing army chief made a remark about how the politicians need to get their act together. The army has gotten its act together, he said, so the politicians need to do the same. So this back and forth, this red team, blue team idea of the army versus the military, the army versus everybody else, has created pretty much a two-party system in Pakistan. There's the civilians on one side with their own divisions, and there's the army on the other side with its own set of complications and problems. So the stakes are pretty high, because Imran Khan has blamed the current military's generals, some of them, he's named a few of them, to be behind the recent attack on him, his ouster, etc. He has backtracked, Imran, to his credit, he has backtracked on his allegations against Washington that it was the U.S. which pretty much designed this coup, this regime change. So he's backtracked on that, which is probably smart, because he didn't have a lot of evidence, and he was burning a lot of political capital in Washington. But what he hasn't backtracked on is staring down at the army. Now, right now, we are faced with a situation that Imran Khan is not in power, but the people who will make this decision are his sworn enemies. They're the Sharifs, and they're in power. Now, the Sharifs. This brings us to the thrust of it all. The Sharifs are Pakistan's most powerful political dynasty. They've been in office pretty much since the 1980s. The godfather, the supremo, the leader, the Qayyad, so to say, the father of the party is Mian Muhammad Nawaz Sharif, aka Nawaz. Nawaz Sharif is a political record holder. He's been elected prime minister 3 times. Very, very experienced South Asian politician, probably the most experienced South Asian politician of his generation. But and his brother, by the way, who's currently prime minister, has been the administrator, the chief administrator of the country's largest province, the Punjab, where the Sharifs derive their power from. In fact, if you took the Punjab out of Pakistan, it would probably be the world's 9th or 10th largest country. It's that big. It's over 130 million people. Anyways, coming back, the Sharifs are this powerhouse. They're the Kennedys meets the Putins meets the Souths. They are the bee's knees when it comes to power politics in Pakistan. However, Nawaz Sharif has a terrible track record of screwing up his relationship with the army, or the army has a terrible track record of screwing up its relationship with this eternal prime minister, this eternal political demagogue who doesn't go away. Nawaz Sharif has, to his credit, not only been prime minister 3 times, he's also had a role to play in nominating 5 out of 15 army chiefs. So that's how long he's been in power. So out of the 15 commander-in-chiefs and chiefs of army staff, heads of the army, who have gone through Pakistan's ranks since 1947, since their independence, Believe it or not, Nawaz Sharif has chosen five, and believe it or not, he's had a problem with all of them. All of them have had a part in either destabilizing his government or indirectly, or even removing him. His first army chief wasn't his pick, but it was sort of thrust on him because it was first time prime minister. That was in the early 90s. Asif Nawaz, General Asif Nawaz Janjua, had a problem with Nawaz Sharif. His next pick, General Wahid Kakar, also not his pick. To his credit, he was sort of thrust upon him. He sent Nawaz Sharif packing, as well as the president at the time. Then, after that, things got really hairy because Nawaz Sharif came back with a vengeance in 1997, had a two-thirds majority, and yet again, ran into trouble with General Musharraf, who conducted a coup, sent Nawaz packing, first in under house arrest, then in actual arrest in jail, and then sent him packing into self-exile. Then, of course, after a gap of a decade, Nawaz Sharif makes a comeback for his third time premiership, chooses General Raheel Sharif, who also ends up in a situation, or basically inherits a situation where Nawaz Sharif has to go get disqualified on corruption charges, flimsy charges, but still, charges are charges, at least in Pakistan. And then he chooses General Qamar Javed Bajwa, who actually oversees that Panama Gate scandal, which and that investigation, which sent Nawaz Sharif packing. So, out of all the people he's chosen, and even the people he's not chosen, he didn't choose the sixth army chief, who pretty much led to a constitutional crisis at that time. That was General Jahangir Karamat. Nawaz Sharif has always chosen the wrong guy. Now, does that mean Nawaz Sharif is not smart? No, he's quite brilliant. Like I said, nobody's been elected prime minister 3 times. Nobody's been around in office since the 80s. Nobody knows Pakistani politics, especially the politics of the Punjab, like Nawaz Sharif does. And yet, he keeps dropping the ball. He's been dropping the ball for almost 40 years. So, finally, the latest from the Sharif camp has forced me to do this. And that's why we're doing this. I'm going to wrap this up pretty quickly, but bear with me. Here's what's been happening over the last couple of weeks. The Prime Minister, who's Sharif's younger brother, Shahbaz, actually went after an international summit, camped out in his brother's living room behind closed doors, stuck around for days, and talked about who the next army chief was going to be. That's how important this decision was. The Sharifs were really playing it close to the chest. Then the political football started, talking to other stakeholders, other coalition members, blah, blah. That became a process. And then finally, this finagling starts. This bureaucratic meandering and maneuvering begins. First, there was a Army Amendment, Army Act Amendment, which is almost a 70-year-old act, which they thought they would amend and change its language. That received a lot of pushback, so they dropped that idea. Then there was this whole drama just no less than 12 hours ago about demanding the summary from General Headquarters, which is the home of the army, about, oh, send us the names, please. And then the army said, we've sent you the names. And this is all on Twitter. Complete disaster, over-dramatized, bad politics, bad optics. The Minister of Defense, Wajahat S, was saying, oh, I haven't received a summary. And the Minister of the Information Minister saying, oh, we haven't received the summary. And the assistant saying, oh, we have received the summary. And the army saying, hey, we sent the summary hours ago. What are you guys talking about? Complete disaster. So Pakistan currently, I'm sorry I didn't turn off my notifications. I will next time. I'm kind of new at this. Pakistan, believe it or not, is pretty much under duress, and that has triggered me to do this explainer with some suggestions about how the Sharifs and frankly anybody in incoming governments can figure this out. I have been reporting on the army since the mid-2000s. I have been across all of the Army's corps, many of its divisions, and pretty much almost 100 of its units. I've covered pretty much every frontline forward operating area, with the Pakistani military and beyond. I've worked with NATO forces as well. This is my subject. This is what I do. This is what I study. And this is something my considered opinion about this disaster right now is that the Sharifs are overthinking this, and they're not really seeing how the army works. So the army, through the years, has evolved into this beast, which is, in a way, whether you like it or not, the most organized organization in the country. And within that animal kingdom, yes, there are serious problems. There are wheels within wheels of the ISI. There are people who go rogue. There's corruption problems, etc. But despite of that, in the larger scheme, the army still turns out to be one of the most organized organizations, if not the most organized organization, and definitely the most powerful one in Pakistan. And to get there, what it does is that internally, it's got very little room for politicizing the topmost appointments. So through the years, the Chief of General Staff, who's literally the right-hand man of the sitting army chief, the serving army chief, every 18 months or so, or a couple of years or so, the Chief of General Staff, who is the most powerful 3-star lieutenant general in the military, he comes, he's appointed, and then he goes home. Yet, that is a signal to the army by the chief as well as the top brass that this guy is the best 3-star general in the batch. Now, you don't need to serve in the army to know this. This is common knowledge. You need to study it a little bit. This is about military culture as well. But Nawaz Sharif, bless him, to his credit, has not once in his life, except Asif Nawaz Janjua, who was not his pick, who was thrust upon him, has never in his life seen this signaling from the military. Nawaz Sharif has instead, and of course now his brother and allies as well, have always overcooked, overthought, and over-politicized the issue of choosing what is ostensibly and ironically the most powerful man in the country by politicizing the issue. Who is he married to? What is his clan? Where is he from? Is he from Lahore or Sialkot? Is he a Pashtun? Is he a Punjabi? Is he an Urdu speaker? This overthinking has led to a culture of generals campaigning for the position of being the top gun. And that is the position where we're at today. We have reached a place where the overthinking, overcooked, over-politicized process has now come to haunt the military itself. There are reports, and there's a lot of them going around, but you heard it from me, there's serious inter-service rivalry between the top 5 or 6 candidates. Different sides are maneuvering, sending out different signals. Ultimately, and here's the bigger irony, yes, it's Nawaz Sharif's decision, but he's not prime minister. In fact, technically, he's in self-exile, and guess what? He's also disqualified for life from Pakistan, from holding Pakistani office in public office. But the way Pakistani politics is structured, he weighs in. So the irony is that a guy who's not even supposed to be in jail, by the way, that guy is going to decide who will become the country's most powerful person, one of the world's most powerful people, the commander of the only nuclear-armed Islamic military in the world. Yeah, handful, ironic, dramatic, and especially the way it's been conducted of late, embarrassing. Because ultimately, you don't have to read the tea leaves, you don't have to climb Kilimanjaro. This is very simple. The top 2 senior-most people in the military right now are also former CGSs, General Sahir Shamshad Mirza and General Azhar Abbas. This has been complicated by the lateral insertion of the senior-most, so to say, who is the former Director General of the ISI, as well as the former Director General of Military Intelligence, General Asim Munir. Now, we don't want to go into personal profiles of everybody involved, but here's the problem. This is becoming a political appointment because General Asim Munir, I'm sure he's a great general, I mean, he's commanded the Force Command Northern Areas, which is the frontline formation which tackles India at the Siachen Glacier, the highest battlefield in the world. He would be, if he is chosen, the only and the first Pakistani army chief to have commanded both military intelligence as well as inter-services intelligence, which makes him a super spook and a super powerful army chief, because he really knows how to gut and clean up, which I hope he does if he does come on, those organizations, because they're quite messy. But here's the problem. A, he's politicized because he was fired by Imran Khan for reasons known and unknown. Known ones are that he didn't get along with Imran Khan personally. He pushed back on Imran Khan's policy with Iran. He pushed back on Imran Khan's personal, family, and inter-party corruption charges, right? So Khan fired him, even though he was Bajwa's pick, and those were the days of Khan and the current military chief being super on the same page. That's what they used to call their type of governance. But the fact is that he's politicized, A, by Khan, and then B, by the fact that he's retiring technically a couple of days before this army chief. That has created this whirlpool of conspiracies, where how is the intelligence apparatus in Pakistan pushing forward this man who's clearly been their boss and who's clearly been who knows the dark arts, followed up by the fact that there's a lot of reporting right now that the Sharifs want to choose someone who will, try to neutralize Khan, because Khan, despite getting shot, seems to be completely out of control, at least for the Sharifs. And that poses Asim Munir in their head as a potential candidate. And thus the finagling and the bureaucratic maneuvering and the delays, despite of the fact that it's clearly a political choice, and despite of the fact that it's also a technically questionable choice, because even if Asim Munir is chosen and the Prime Minister can do it, the case is likely, because of the technicalities of his retirement date, the case is likely to get messy, probably be taken up by a court. So my question, why not skip the politics and look at the signaling from the army's side? Play the army's game with the army. Don't overthink the situation. The top two guys are also the most qualified men on paper. I'm sure the rest of the generals are fantastic. Noman Mahmood has spent the last decade and a half on the front lines, on the Western Theatre, academic. He's led the Army's two biggest universities and colleges, and has actual experience of tackling the Taliban on the ground. He's next in seniority after General Sahir and General Azhar. General Amir, I don't know much about. He's the last guy on the roll on the roster, but the second last guy on the roster also completely politicized. His name is General Faiz, former DGISI, supposedly a pal of Imran Khan, supposedly biased, compromised by journalists when he ended up having a cup of tea with the Taliban in this Kabul Serena Hotel, as pretty much 48 hours after the American pullout. Quite a diplomatic disaster that was for the country's intelligence community. So here's my recommendation to everyone involved. Can we please not repeat the mistakes of the past 3 to 4 decades? Can we please not try to learn to read the tea leaves? All we have to know is that the signaling has already gone out. The top two candidates by seniority are also the brightest chaps in the army. So thinks the army, because they weren't political appointees. Mind you, these guys have served as chiefs of general staff. They've also served as corps commanders of the single largest military formation in the country, which is the 10th Corps. So the Sharifs are back at it. They've done this before. They have overthought the process. With General Musharraf, it was about his ethnic heritage. With General Bajwa, it was about his relatives. With General Rahil, it was about the fact that he was a Lahori, even though none of these guys were the top choice. The obvious choices in General Bajwa's case, Ashfaq Nadeem; in Rahil's case, General Rashid; even General Tariq, who had combat experience; in General Musharraf's case, General Ali Quli Khan. The top choices of the institution, which the institution put forth, they were ignored. And so what ends up happening every time, incessantly, consistently, over decades, is that when you get an underdog in, because you think he's going to be your guy, because you think he's going to owe you, because you think that I can control this guy because he's relatively weak on merit, on standing, etc. Well, then when that guy comes in, he's got more to prove. He doesn't enjoy that he's sort of like King Arthur. He faces a very round table, and his idea is to make it longer over time. But he's in an Arthurian conundrum. He's got King Arthur's problem, and he has to satisfy the knights around him. And for that's when the politics begins. That's when the political compromises start. That's when the army starts to gnaw its teeth and show its fangs, and that ultimately has backfired, not once, not twice, not thrice, but 5 times and 6 times if you count the Jahangir Karamat disaster during the mid-90s. So that is my bit. It's been a little long, but hey, if this was too much inside baseball, write to me. Tell me if I can improve this. I'm kind of new at this, getting old, but want to get back in the game. This is what I do. Check out my Urdu vlog, put up right under this one, put up a few hours ago. That says, "Stop politics, choose army chief." That's my message here as well. Stop overthinking, stop politicizing the issue, go with what the army signaling is, because if you're going to overcook this goose, it's going to bite back. And that is what seems to be happening right now. I hope you enjoyed this. Subscribe, write, like, tweet. Let's talk. I'm back, and I hope we stay in touch. Talk soon. Bye.